Hello, I'm happy that you were able to join us today for this special educational presentation on the benefits of Florida residency and how to move your assets to Florida to shelter it from potential taxation and passing assets on to your beneficiaries. As I go through this presentation, you're going to have some slides I'm going to walk through, but also anyone who wants to schedule a 20-minute call, we call it a right fit call, to give us an opportunity to learn about your situation, learn a little bit about us, to see how we may be able to be of help. You can always click on the right here where you can see the scheduled 20-minute right fit call. Just click on that and we'll be able to schedule some time for us to speak. So at this point, let's get right to our presentation. This more than likely is going to take about a half hour, but we wanted to put this presentation to assist people on how to make Florida your legal residence and how to reduce your taxes. My name is Tony. I am the founder of Advanced Wealth Management, which we'll share a little bit with you about, but I've been down here in Florida since 1993. I used to work for Gatorade, was there when we signed Michael Jordan, worked there for going on 6 years, but an opportunity came to take a position down here with Tropicana, manage a $1.6 billion portfolio for them. So I decided at that time that I was going to make my transition to Florida a little early at 30 versus waiting until I'm 65. But it was a good decision. I love where I'm at right now. Florida sees basically 1,000 people moving down here daily. And many of those people are coming from high tax states, seeking a little shelter and keeping a little more of their hard-earned money for themselves. But in addition, Florida, as you know, offers quite a few benefits. One is the weather down here is fantastic. Even during the summer, for me, it gets a little hot, but I've gotten very used to it. But the winters here are great. We have some of the best golf courses in the country, some of the most beautiful sunsets, some of the best fishing around. This picture at the bottom is me and my buddy Ronnie going out here in just west coast of Sarasota, catching a sailfish, which is very rare. The number one beautiful beach in the country, Siesta Keys, right here in our backyard. And we've had some celebrities like Tom Brady leave New England and come down to join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, resign. Now he's back. And we've had a few other winners, including LeBron, D-Wade, the Tampa Bay Lightning. So it's a great place to be at. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today. Today's agenda, I'm going to spend the first few minutes talking about the benefits of Florida residency and also looking at the essential estate planning documents that you need to take into consideration. Secondly, is I'm going to review our comprehensive wealth planning process, where we take a look at how all the key areas are integrated and how, if you're going to do effective planning, you really need to take a holistic approach. Third, I'm going to look at the value of what we call the family estate organizer. This is something we recommend every family have as they're put together, they're planned together. And then secondly, I'm going to take a look at some options for safe haven. We're in an environment now where inflation may be with us for quite a long time. So I'm going to take a look at some areas that you may be able to shelter, protect some of your assets while getting some very good tax efficient income. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Massachusetts. I went to University of Massachusetts undergraduate, played football there for a little while. Then I am joining the U.S. Army, where I was infantry, 1981 through 1987. Great experience working for the serving our country. Went on to get my MBA from University of Texas in Austin, graduated in 1988. I've worked with the IBM Corporation in Springfield, Massachusetts. Spent 5 years in Chicago, great city, loved it. But again, the dark and early cold in the winter was an area, a big motivation for me to leave that area and come to Florida. So I joined Tropicana in 1993. At the time, I was 30 years old. I was the youngest director managing a $1.6 billion portfolio in the company's history. But this is something that I've been doing now, is helping families, business owners, professionals, how to manage their wealth and protect it moving forward. I've also had some advanced training, both from Harvard and MIT, and course completion for the CFP, CRFA, and CAS designations. I've also been featured in a variety of different key publications such as Forbes, SNN, CNBC, and rated as a 5-star manager here in the Florida area. I started my firm because, after doing venture capital and doing working for corporations for quite a while, we're able to sell a company that we founded for quite a bit of money. So looking for people to help me manage my own wealth, I found that there was something missing. One was if you had a lot of money, let's say $500 million or above, you can go to a family office where they'll dedicate their services in an integrated, holistic fashion to help you with all the key elements needed to manage, your wealth, from investments to taxes to estate planning, governance, any kind of business succession planning, etc. But what I found is, let's say, you don't have a $500 million. Where do you go? And what I found there was basically a lack of what I would call a coordinated family type office model to meet those types of needs for these, what I call your millionaire next door. So that's why I started Advanced Wealth Management. We follow a boutique family office model, and we're fiduciary advisors, meaning that your interest always comes first. And we follow this one-stop shop service model of a family office where your wealth advisor, accountants, attorneys, insurance, any other business specialists that we need, health specialists, are all working on your behalf, but being done in a coordinated fashion under one roof. So that's the key that we want to bring out there. This is a two-part series. The first session is going to be an educational presentation, and we also offer people who attend our these educational sessions an opportunity for a complimentary consultation, which usually takes about 20 minutes just to learn a little more about you as well about our firm. So let's get started. My focus in doing these is basically, I believe in this quote from Benjamin Franklin, that an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. I believe that an educated investor, educated business owner, professional, retiree is going to make the best decisions by having the facts. So I started this company, and we have a process here, which is an integrated, comprehensive wealth planning process, because all of these things are integrated. So looking at your retirement income, how much money you're going to need for your core living expenses, your lifestyle expenses, both monies you may need short-term and long-term, putting together a strategy for doing that. Also looking at how your investments and wealth management ties into it. As you can see here, I have the proactive tax planning highlighted. That's because this is an area where we provide the most value. That is by showing you how you can keep more of what is yours, but also integrating it with long-term care and healthcare expenses, which tend to increase during retirement, and putting together your estate plan so that everything is integrated. So that's what we call comprehensive wealth planning. Our mission as companies basically is to educate today's business owners, professionals, and retirees on this comprehensive wealth planning strategy to empower them to make informed decisions to optimize their retirement goals, thereby achieving clarity and peace of mind. So what we found is that typically most of our clients, and we have a lot of, snowbird clients from up north down here, as well as those that reside here long-term. And our clients tend to be business owners, professionals, and retirees. And what I found is that there are 5 important goals and dynamic concerns that these individuals have. First is wealth preservation. That is, they worked and invested very hard to attain their wealth. And now it's vitally important to protect that wealth as well as grow it for the leisure years for them to enjoy it. So wealth enhancement, basically, this encompasses a proactive tax management approach to increase tax alpha by strategically maneuvering assets and optimizing decision-making on which income streams to use and at which points in retirement. Wealth transfer, this focuses on maximizing estate value transfers and looking at how to leave a lasting legacy to your heirs. Wealth protection, this basically, again, is you've worked very hard to attain this wealth. We want to make sure that clients' assets are protected from unforeseen litigation, accidents, and potentially divorces. And then 5th is how to maximize charitable contributions. Most of our clients are very charitable oriented, so we want to take a look at ways of how they can incorporate charitable gifting by integrating it into their overall plan and optimizing for tax efficiency. So let's first start by looking at the benefits of Florida residency. There are basically 4 key areas. First is the state of Florida has no state income tax. So that means that no state taxes on your Social Security benefits, your pensions, IRAs, 401ks, and capital gains taxes. There's also no inheritance or estate tax in addition to the federal estate tax. You also get up to $50,000 homestead exemption on property taxes and other retiree-friendly exemptions. There's what is called the third 3% annual cap in portability. That basically protects the value of your real estate that's going to get taxed by not increasing higher than 3% annually. If you've seen what's happened in real estate recently, up 20, 30% a year, if your taxes are going up that high, you're putting quite a bit of pressure potentially on your lifestyle. And then asset protection. The state of Florida, since its existence in its constitution, has incorporated some very good asset protection for those that want to make Florida their residence or look at retiring down here. Basically, your home's protected, life insurance, annuities, retirement accounts, and wages are protected from a levy. So not sure who's watching this, but most of our clients tend to be from the upper Midwest and Northeast. We have clients as far as California moving out there to Florida to take advantage of the tax code and similar weather benefits. So how high are individual income tax rates in your state? So you can see here many of the northern states. New York, we're looking at 8.5%, Maine 7%, Massachusetts 5%, Rhode Island at 6%, Connecticut at 7%, New Jersey at 10.75%, California the highest income tax rate at 13.3%. So as you can see, Florida has no state income tax, so does Texas. You can see that Florida is a key state and a key attraction for a lot of people moving down here. And if we take a look at, in addition to the federal estate tax, which is currently listed at roughly about 12.2 million. But if you take a look at many states, including 12 states in the District of Columbia, impose an estate tax. And then you can see that there are 6 states that have an inheritance tax. And Maryland is the only state that has both an additional state level estate tax and an inheritance tax. So those are things to take into consideration as you begin to manage your state affairs and your estate planning in terms of how to optimize what you leave for your beneficiaries. Now, some people are under the misconception that if a state does not have a state income tax, that they're going to make it up by taxing your property quite higher. That's not the case here in Florida. This is basically a map that shows us how high your property taxes are in which state you live in. So you can see, some states have quite a bit of high, taxes. So we see, for example, Texas has no state income tax, but its average property tax is at 1.90%. Illinois, 2.3%. We can see here, places in the Northeast are at that 1.6 to 2% or even higher. And New Jersey has the highest, property taxes in the country at an average of 2.38%. So the fact that Florida averages at 1.06%, an additional benefit as far as reduction in taxes moving forward. What this chart does is shows us the state taxation of Social Security. They're basically, several levels here. The red states are taxed. So we have a few states here, as you can see on this map, including West Virginia, Vermont, Minnesota, North Dakota, New Mexico, where your Social Security is taxes. Here we have not subject to a tax highlighted in dark green, and you can see the states that have no individual tax, which includes Florida, which also does not tax your Social Security benefits. So that's another key important factor to take a look at. And again, we know that most retirees may have a pension, an IRA, or 401k, so we want to take a look at what the impact on that is as well. So as again, you can see here, the dark green, fully shaded in green, there's no taxes on 401k or pension funds. And then the one state that's highlighted here with the lines, basically you can see Alabama, it does not tax your pension, but your 401k and IRA distributions are taxed. So Florida, again, is a state where there's no taxes on your pensions, IRAs, and or 401k benefit. And let's take a look at the homestead exemption in a little more detail. So state law allows Florida homeowners to claim up to $50,000 homestead exemption on their primary residence. The first $25,000 of this exemption applies to all the taxing authorities. The second $25,000 includes board taxes and applies to properties with assessed values greater than $50,000. This usually results in a savings of about $750 annually, which for many of my clients is a decent cruise for a weekend. And also for homeowners who move from one Florida homestead to another, they can transfer or have portability on that benefit from one property to another. In addition, the Save Our Homes cap on homestead property limits the increase in the assessed value to 3% annually. So when I first moved down here in 1993, bought a house on the water, which is now worth about 5-6 times the value, but my taxable valuations remain fairly low, less than half of what the property would be appraised at today, which saves on taxes quite a bit. Now, if you want to file exemptions here in Florida, those must be made between January 1st and March 1st for the tax year eligible. So, for example, if you're living in your permanent home on January 1st of this past year, 2022, then you had until the close of business on March 2nd, 2022, to file for your homestead exemption for that year. And that is the case in every year. Let's take a look at constitutionally protected assets provided for Florida residents. Your primary residence here is protected from levy and execution by the judgment by creditors. That is protected under Article 10, Section 4 of the Florida Constitution. However, this does not preclude a bank that you may have a mortgage on your home and if you didn't pay, or liens from contractors, et cetera, from coming after your home. So there are some exceptions there. Florida also provides its residents with statutory creditor protection for life insurance proceeds and cash value, annuities, retirement accounts, and wages. So these benefits from an asset protection standpoint here in the state of Florida provides an additional peace of mind, knowing that, your creditors can't come after, those assets, which for many of our clients, there tend to be their significant assets. Now, a note of caution here in becoming a Florida resident. The state of Florida is not going to come after you 25, 30 years later because you haven't paid taxes and they're still considering you a resident. It's the northern states that if you're beginning to sever that relationship, or even if you go back and forth, you want to make sure that 25, 30 years after the fact, they're not trying to come back and try to hit you for back taxes that you haven't paid. So the key facts and circumstances are if you intend to spend a significant amount of time outside of Florida, you want to plan to be in Florida for a minimum of 6 months and 1 day, which is the minimum time required to be considered a Florida resident. While there's no conclusive test for determining state domicile, the more steps you take that show you are terminating connections with your current state of domicile, and then the more steps you take to show connections with Florida, the greater the likelihood that your current state of domicile will let you go, and the more you can take advantage of those benefits afforded to Florida residents. So what are the steps you need to do to establish Florida residency? We have a list on our website that you can always click to receive this list, or for those who click on the 20-minute phone call, we can send a list of that to you. But it's a fairly comprehensive list. But while Florida may welcome you as a permanent resident, the state in which you currently reside may need some convincing before it lets you go. And we all know that many of these states, are seeing a significant, reduction in population because people are leaving. The COVID crisis is showing people that they can now work from anywhere. So people are beginning to leave, but also the tax situation. We're seeing many corporations, reposition their headquarters here in Texas and Florida. So the key is, if you're going to make that transition, you want to do it so that you're stacking the odds in your favor, so that these northern states may not come back after you for back taxes due after your passing, and then having your beneficiaries to deal with that particular situation. Again, for those of you who want to schedule a 20-minute right fit call for additional information, we'll be more than happy. You can click to the right. But let's take a look at a few things that, northern states will do. Is, one of the first things they'll take a look at is your assets. How are they titled? For example, if you have a checking account or savings account, that on your checkbook, there's a couple of numbers. What do these numbers to the left here and in the middle designate? Basically, this is the routing number, which tells the state where your banking account is located at, and this is your account number. So if you have significant assets residing in a state that you're not claiming to be a domicile of, then that may be an asset that they may use in their favor eventually in trying to potentially recoup back taxes. So the steps to establish Florida residency, I've listed a few of the more critical ones here, but then again, we also have this domicile checklist that you can get from our website. It's awmfl.com. But basically, you want to have your estate planning documents prepared under Florida law. If you already have documents done up north, it's very easy to potentially reposition it and redo it and update it to reflect Florida. You want to live in Florida, mainly the other state, as we mentioned, 6 months and 1 day. You want to vote in Florida. You want to obtain a driver's license and surrender the old one back to the previous state. You want to file an affidavit declaring domicile in the local county court. That's about $85 here in the state of Florida. You want to obtain a Florida safe deposit box and relocate all of your items held, in your former state of domicile. And you want to move large accounts and assets to Florida as much as possible, again, to stack those facts and circumstances in your favor. So speaking of estate planning documents, again, for those who were just interested in the benefits of Florida residency and how we may be able to help, you can go in and schedule an appointment now for that 20-minute call. Thank you for joining us. What I'm going to do next is talk about estate planning and look at some of the essential things you may want to consider in making that transition. Or if you're already in Florida and you want to update your estate planning documents or create one, we do that in-house. So what is an estate and what is estate planning? Basically, an estate is all of the wealth you've accumulated during your lifetime. Okay, so that can be your house, accounts, IRAs, 401ks, boats, cars, jewelry, art, everything is considered a part of your estate. What is estate planning? Basically, there's two key goals. One is you want to be able to manage assets in your affairs during your lifetime. And secondly is you want to control and determine how to distribute assets upon your passing. So estate planning is a way to determine who the executor will. Do you need wills and trusts created? Are you going to have any charitable intention we want to take into consideration? Any taxes or succession planning as far as your businesses are concerned? Any living will or funeral expenses that we want to take into consideration? Life insurance and assets, marital deduction and transfers. So there's a lot of planning to have an effective estate plan. Taking a look at the benefits of estate planning, first is you get to select who will receive your assets. Okay. Many states, including the state of Florida, if you don't determine who your beneficiaries are, the state has, laws which will determine, where that money is going to go. It may not necessarily be who you wanted to go to. Okay, so you get to determine the distribution of your estate. You get to choose the individuals to manage your affairs and your estate. So, for example, who's going to have a decision-making on healthcare decisions as well as financial decisions. Also, it's a way to reduce settlement costs and in particular probate costs. And by doing the appropriate estate planning, it's a great way to make it private versus making a public situation. Also want to be able to plan to provide liquid capital for burial, settlement, and income tax costs. So basically, the first thing is, how do properties pass at death? Again, I'm providing this information. We work with a group of attorneys here in the state of Florida, as well as 48 other states throughout the U.S. to help clients put their estate plans in order. So we provide this as an overview, but the actual documents would be created by one of our attorney partners. So basically, how property passes at death is three ways. One is joint ownership. So if you have a home owned by husband and wife, something happens to one spouse, the other spouse automatically will inherit it. If you have an IRA account and you determine, who the beneficiary is, then that's going to fall under the beneficiary designation. So you have joint ownership, you have beneficiary designation, and that can take various forms. So for example, if you have an individual savings account at a bank versus a brokerage firm, you have what's called a POD, which stands for payable on death or transfer on death. That's where you can add who the beneficiary is going to be. Then you have what's called testamentary documents. Basically, those are wills or trusts, which we'll get into a little more. So let's take a look at the essential estate planning documents that I believe every family should have. We'll start on the left here. One is a last will. Basically, this is a will that's going to determine how everything is going to be passed above and beyond where you may have, a trust and beneficiary designations. A revocable living trust. Not everyone needs to have this, but it provides for additional controls and some additional protection, and as far as providing estate planning and distribution of assets. And then these are documents that we believe every family should have, a pre-need guardian declaration. That is determining ahead of time, especially as you age, if you get into a situation where you can't take care of yourself, who's going to make those decisions for you. A living will. For many of you who may have been here in Florida or maybe national news, you heard about the Terry Schiavo case. That was a situation where she was basically comatose and her husband wanted to pull the plug, but the family said that no, she would want to stay alive. So it basically went back and forth between the courts for about a year, and we know how expensive it is if you stayed in the hospital for one day. So that can have a significant impact on one's estate. And then advanced healthcare directive. This is basically a document that says this is who's going to help make decisions on your behalf from a healthcare standpoint. And this durable power of attorney here in the state of Florida is very important because all of these other documents, if you don't have them, the state has what's called the intestacy laws, which will determine who will receive your assets and who may make healthcare decisions. It may not necessarily be who you want to have, but the state has procedures when someone does not have that in place. But if you need a power of attorney to make financial decisions on your behalf, so let's say, we have husband in a, long-term care situation. He has an IRA account. Technically, the spouse cannot direct a brokerage firm or a custodian to make trades in that account. You need to have a power of attorney. Now, if you have to go through a power of attorney, which you don't have, when you're going to have to go through a guardian declaration or proceeding, which typically may cost $5,000 or more for many of the attorneys we work with, whereas having this power of attorney for a simple $200, you can have that done to prevent those aggravations in the future. Another way that we're finding many families taking advantage of the Florida residency is by looking at what's called a Florida dynasty trust. Okay. Now, what is a dynasty trust? It's basically a way to pass your wealth from generation to generation while protecting your hard-earned assets from creditors and other parties. One of the greatest benefits of setting up a dynasty trust is that allows you to ensure that multiple generations inherit your assets without incurring transfer taxes. So how do you go about setting up a dynasty trust in Florida? Again, we have a group of attorneys we work with that can help you put this together. You can basically set up a dynasty trust by executing a declaration of trust and then transferring your assets into the trust. In Florida, a dynasty trust can be a testamentary or inter vivos. A testamentary trust is established upon the decedent's death, as long as their last will and testament instructed a personal representative of the estate to create a trust. An inter vivos trust are created when the individual is still alive. So why Florida Dynasty Trust? Well, unlike other states, Florida has a 360-year rule, which means that dynasty trusts can last up to 360 years. You can fund a dynasty trust with valuable assets, including cash, real estate, securities, investments, and stocks. And what are the benefits of creating a dynasty trust? Well, as we mentioned before, there are many benefits, but the biggest one is that you can transfer valuable assets into a trust and have that pass from generation to generation while skipping the transfer taxes. Okay. You can transfer your assets from generation to generation without incurring estate taxes. You can preserve your wealth for up to 360 years. A well-structured dynasty trust here in Florida can last up to 360 years. Because of the length, the trustor can appoint successive trustees to handle the administration of the trust for decades to come. They also be able to protect your assets from bankruptcy and divorce. If your child or grandchild files for a divorce or declares bankruptcy, the assets held in a dynasty trust will not be accessible to the spouses or the creditors. You get to control the distribution. So it's basically what I call, control from heaven. A trustor can decide how their assets will be distributed, when they will be distributed, and in what amounts. You can also make direct distributions. You have the option of making direct distributions to your beneficiaries in future generations. So it's the trust that gives you the ultimate protection for especially individuals that have larger estates. Now, as a company, one of the things we specialize in is helping people put their estate plans, doing this comprehensive planning. We put it all together in what we call a family estate organizer. That is a way not only to have your estate planning documents, but to have all of the important documents as far as life insurance, taxes, property documents, debt statements, bank accounts, Roth, IRA accounts, anything. You want to have it in a easy to find location. We have this extensive folder we put together to make it available to our clients so that the executors have an easy place to find and execute the wishes of that individual. Here's the pricing for estate planning services. Again, because of the discounts and the number of estate plans that we help clients with, In many cases, it's half the price of working with these attorneys directly. So if it's a basic will package for an individual, we can easily do that at $749 for a married couple. For $200 more, that package would include your last will and testament, financial power of attorney, the healthcare power of attorney, also cloud storage and sharing. And for those families that may need the trust, if it's just a single individual, the total there is roughly $1,449. And for a married couple, for a few $100s more, total of $1,949. Now, I've worked with many attorneys in the past where if you're doing, let's say, a married trust, you're looking at about $4,500 to $5,000. So the initial negotiated price that we receive to provide these to our clients, and it's very easy. We can do this online, or you can come into our office where we sit down with you and ask a variety of questions, and based on what you wish to have done, we'll submit it to the attorneys. They'll develop the documents, and then we'll sit down with here and sign it, have it notarized, a couple of witnesses, and it goes into effect. So again, for those of you who are interested, you can click on the right to schedule that 20-minute right fit call. Now, what I'm going to do is spend a little bit of time in talking about some additional things that if you're thinking about optimizing your retirement, that you need to take into consideration. So the first is looking at taxes. Okay, the first thing we're going to look at is the Secure Act, which went into effect basically in 2020, but most people don't know what it is. Okay, so basically the Secure Act, basically what it's done, it's increased the required minimum distribution from what used to be age 70 and a half to age 72 now. So basically now you can start your RMD at age 72. So an additional 1.5 years has been delayed. But the big change is that previously you had what was called a stretch IRA capability, meaning that if you had an IRA account, you can leave it to as many beneficiaries as possible. That IRA can be, segmented into multiple IRAs for each of the beneficiaries, because the younger they were, the less they would have to take out in RMD over their lifetime, which meant they had compounded tax deferred growth in that account. It was a significant estate planning benefit. But with the Secure Act, that goes away. So now is limited to 10 years for non-spousal beneficiaries or minors. So if you have beneficiaries that's not a spouse or over the age of 18, no longer can they do this lifetime stretch. They would have to take that money out within 10 years. That applies both to IRAs, 401ks, Roths, any kind of a qualified account. Now, strategies to replace the stretch, which we'll talk a little bit about. Roth conversions, I still believe, is one of the best ways to do that. However, there's been some proposed legislation recently that may have a limit on RMD rules for high-income earners, which may go into effect through the year 29 and year 2032. So those are things we're keeping a close eye on. But there's also, when we talk about charitable distribution and management, there's what's called a QCD, which is a qualified charitable distribution. That means that instead of taking the RMD, you can basically earmark that RMD to go to a charity. That means that you end up not paying taxes on that money, and the charity that receives that money is not going to pay taxes. So versus taking IRA money, taking the RMD, this is a great planning tool. You also have what's called a qualified longevity contract. That's for those individuals that want to delay taking RMD. They can take a certain amount of that money and put it into QLAC, which now would delay the RMD until age 85. For some individuals, it makes a lot of sense. For others, maybe not. Okay. And Congress passed permanently the extension of qualified child distribution from our IRAs up to $100,000 of RMD. So that there was some ambiguity, but this past year that has been passed into law. Now let's take a look at importance of beneficiary designation, because you can go through determining who your beneficiaries are, but I tell my clients you need to go a step further, and that is understanding the financial acumen of those beneficiaries that you're going to be entrusting those assets with. So what we have here on the picture is my daughter, Christina, who's a physician's assistant here in Sarasota, Florida. She does a great job. She has advanced degrees. If I were to leave her money, she's going to know what to do with it, what not to do with it. But let's say I had a daughter who's a policewoman. We can see this nice picture we found here. That's not my daughter, but it's a beautiful picture of a policewoman, and something about women with guns, is attractive to me. So this was a nice picture. But we all know that policewomen, policemen, typically do not get paid what they're really worth, but they may have kids to help put through college. So if you left an IRA for that individual, you may want to provide some flexibility for these two daughters. But let's say I have a son who's 45 years old, still living at home, plays in a band. The name of that band is Purple Kush, if you know what I mean. Not there's anything wrong with that, but some people are very good when it comes to making decisions about money, and some people believe money grows on trees and may not necessarily take the best advantage of how to protect that money. So some cases you may have to protect your beneficiaries from themselves. Now, I use this picture because I love these movies. Cheech and Chong are great characters that I've loved for quite a long time. But if you had $1 million IRA and these kids were your sons, you may want to potentially put that IRA in what we call an IRA trust. Basically, is to protect them from themselves and maybe give them an income, but they'll give access to the complete account. So when we talk about comprehensive wealth planning, we're talking about integrating all of these key components. And as I mentioned, tax planning is probably the biggest added value alpha we find out there. And I've been preaching this to my clients for quite a while. What we see here is basically it comes from usdebtclock.org. You can look this up yourself on the internet. This is a live accounting of the national debt. Okay. So I took this back earlier this year. You can see that our national debt is at over $30 trillion, and we're going in the hole by about $1 trillion. That's what's in the books. But if you take a look at Social Security, Medicare, and you take a look at the unfunded liabilities at $164 trillion. So what this spells to me is what you see written on top here, and that is on 2011, January, David M. Walker, who was the USA Comptroller for the U.S., basically he was the CPA for the United States, he took to public radio and said, based on the current fiscal path, future tax rates will have to double or our country can go bankrupt. Now, the reason why he said this is basically it's simple math, looking at the math of where a country was heading. So how do you best, do proactive tax management? Okay. Now, nothing wrong against tax preparers, because they do your taxes, they do it very effectively. But typically, if you're working with just the person who's preparing your taxes, you're giving them your statements. They're telling you, okay, we're going to have it available in 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll show you what you need to pay in taxes. That's effective, but tax planners are taking a look at the big picture. And that's what we do as a firm. So we talk about a boutique family office. You have your investment manager, your accountant, your estate planning. Everyone is working, collaborating with each other in terms of how to set up a plan that's going to minimize your tax situation in the future. And a big component of that is basically taking a look at tax bracket management. So what we're taking a look at here for 2022 tax brackets, we see that taxes are on sale right now because the current tax benefits is scheduled to end at the end of December 31st, year 2025. So we still have another 3 years to go before this goes away. So there's significant planning opportunities that I recommend for my clients. And typically, to make this a simple way for you to understand, the key is to move as much money from a taxable to a tax deferred to a tax-free situation as possible. Okay. And to give you an example of what I mean by completely tax-free, it has to meet the following criteria. It has no federal tax, no state income tax, no capital gains tax, and also the distributions don't cause your Social Security taxation to go up. So a few things qualify for that. One is Roth IRAs, but also taking advantage of what we call life insurance retirement planning philosophy, because insurance companies for many years have been given one of the best tax benefits out there, and that distributions from a life insurance policy typically will go to next generation tax-free. There's a variety of products taking advantage of that tax code. The younger you are, the better you can start planning for the future with investments that you can put into something that's going to go tax deferred, protected from crashing. It can make up to 10 to 15% annually, but then you can take a tax-free loan on that investment for the rest of your life. So it's almost like creating a Roth IRA with unlimited contributions, a tremendous planning tool that I've used for many of my clients. So the key is to move from inefficient taxable situation. In many cases, I have clients when they come to me, they have a lot of money sitting in a bank account or CDs, they're paying taxes, but yet they're complaining about the 2% or 1% they're receiving on those accounts. So typically what we do is we'll incorporate what we call a Roth ladder conversion. This is a method of getting your money out of your traditional IRA qualified accounts like 401k into a Roth account. You can dramatically reduce your tax exposure over 30-year retirement. The earlier you start, the better off it is. Proper planning is required. Tax-savvy investors want to pay as little income as possible. So a Roth conversion ladder, multi-year planning strategy for many of you is a great way to protect your assets moving forward. Now, we help a lot of families. This couple here that was a Michigan resident came to us in early 2020. They were Michigan residents, very nice clients of ours, retired a dentist, and she was a professional working at Pfizer. But when they came to us, they wanted to understand what is the benefit if there was a switch from Michigan being their primary residence to Florida. So what we did is a complete estate value analysis, just looking at that one factor, the Michigan income tax rate of 4.25. And just by changing that one factor showed us basically that they can increase their net worth at that time from 5.7 to 5.9, or an increase of $224,000 over their lifetime. Now, that is a significant amount of money that may be left to the beneficiaries, versus continue to pay the Northern Michigan tax rate. The other thing we took a look at is, for the wife, because she was younger and they had enough assets where the IRA is going to go to their beneficiaries. But given the Secure Act and how we may have to be distributed within 10 years, we took a look at, one is if we did no Roth conversion, which basically says she would wait until she's age 72, start to take her RMDs. We used an assumption that the investments are growing at 5%. She would pay federal taxes on the large amounts taken. So what this showed is that basically she would pay, a total of $1.5 million in taxes, and the tax-free distribution to her beneficiary was eventually going to be about $4 million. Versus if we did a Roth conversion using the multi-year strategy or the ladder we talked about, her total taxes paid was going to be $394,000, but the total tax-free distribution is now $12.6 million to her beneficiary. So significant amount as far as tax planning. When it comes to investments, a key thing that I tell my clients here is many folks have worked with traditional broker-dealers, advisors that focus on the accumulation stage. But as you get towards, moving away, selling your business or retiring, and now you want to spend more time in Florida, the key is to take a look at the distribution management aspects of those investments, because let's face it, many cases, traditional pension funds no longer exist. So people more and more are having to rely on their assets and Social Security to manage their retirement. So the key is to take a look at how to manage the distribution stage. I have it depicted here because one of my best friends that I work with at Tropicana, Ken, is climbing mountains around the world. He's trying to get me to climb these mountains with him. It's like, yeah, I'm from the islands. I'm kind of, like warm weather, but cold. I can't take it for too long. But I asked him, where most of the fatalities? Is it on the ascent or the descent? And he said it's on the descent because, weather patterns may change, injuries, people may get sick. So the same thing as far as managing your retirement is the distribution stage is where there are many of the risks involved, okay? So the key is you want to have a management philosophy that looks at investments, taxes, asset protection, liquidity, and how to make it as tax efficient, and also how to reduce the fee so that you get to keep more of what you have. So we develop a solid investment plan, focusing on the distribution phase of your retirement, hedging against major losses that may derail your lifestyle, but also using this bucket planning philosophy of segmenting monies based on when you're going to need them and managing risk accordingly, but diversifying so that you don't have all your things in one basket to maximize return per unit of risk that you're willing to take. Okay. Now, given what's taking place right now, what's causing this recent sell-off? Well, put it simply is most investors are short-term oriented, and there's a lot of near-term to worry about. So inflation is high, coming in at 40-year highs. Interest rates are rising rapidly based on what the Fed said recently. We're likely headed into a recession. COVID is still here, causing lockdowns in some parts of the world, mainly China. And finally, if that wasn't enough, we had the biggest country landmass-wise in Russia decide to invade the second biggest landmass country in Ukraine. So all of a sudden, there are many uncertainties out there. But when you go back and you study periods like this, and this is a chart provided by Bridgewater and Associates, I follow Ray Dalio very closely because he's been able to put together books talking about the understanding big debt crisis, but also understanding, the growth and the demise of, superpowers over time, to give you an idea of where we are today. If you haven't read those books, I highly recommend you reading them. He wrote another great book called Principles, which I'm a big fan because he tends to be very methodical in his approach. But the study that they did basically looked at when we have nominal GDP growth higher than what the bond yields are, which we're in that situation right now because of inflation. During periods like that, they came back with that stocks tend to do well, especially dividend paying stocks, but also commodities is a great area to be in. So, we go back and we look at high inflationary periods during the early 70s. What we found is that a cumulative dividend growth of $1 invested in the S&P 500, highlighted here in yellow, not only kept up with inflation, but as we saw inflation taper because of the 0% interest rates we've been implementing mostly since the around 2008, 2009 era, we saw inflation come down significantly in the 2% range. Now it's increasing, but having dividend stocks is a great way to overcome inflation long term. Okay, one of the tools we use, which is automated investing using artificial intelligence to basically quantify where the best value is in the marketplace, but actively monitor that and change it. That's a great strategy we've put together for our clients to manage not only alpha, through a lot of tax loss harvesting, but also to keep monies fairly safe in times of decline. So we saw this portfolio up 29% in 2021 and down year to date around 9% with the rest of the market. NASDAQ's down 28, S&P down about 20. But with every crisis, it creates opportunities for clients that are out there that have money sitting in cash, bank accounts, some of the best institutional bond managers, some of the people we use. Now you're getting yields of 5% or higher because those managers with rates going up or down anywhere between 13 and 15% on a year. So for clients or individuals who have monies that you need liquid, but you want to take advantage of the spread between 5.4% tax-free or the 10-year treasury at about 3%, that's a significant tax efficient differential. The other key area I've been a big proponent of the last 3-4 years, anticipating we're going to get into this inflationary period, just simply because of the easy monetary policy that our government has followed. And I'm not going to go back and evaluate whether it was the right thing or not to do. Certainly we know that staving, spiraling down because of COVID was a good thing to do. But how much and when are questions that maybe we can go back in history and look at. But we're in the situation now where we have to determine how to best protect our assets moving forward. And I'm a big proponent of real assets because it's something you can't print more of, especially assets that generate a very good dividend yield. Okay, so this portfolio of one of the firms that, very closely affiliated with it, this is a private real estate portfolio. It's a perpetual REIT with $102 billion already invested in it. But it's 50% invested in single family homes that are for rentals or basically communities that are upscale, primarily in Southeast US, here in Florida, Texas, Nevada, Arizona, all of the states that are seeing significant population growth where the demand for rentals is going up significantly. And, second largest part of the portfolio is about 30% in industrial portfolios or warehouses. Again, with more and more people shopping online, the ability to have that product at the local metro area to get it to you is very important. But they have been also making significant investments in data centers, self-storage facilities, triple net lease with the Bellagio and MGM Grand in Las Vegas paying 6%. So this is a great portfolio because it's real assets here in the U.S., insulated from a lot of the risk we're seeing around the world today. And it has a very good dividend yield of about 4.5%. And again, during inflationary periods, what we do know is that real estate operating income versus the US CPI, if you go back to 1996 to where we are today, we can see that that income kept up and beat inflation significantly during that period of time. So again, a great way to take risk away from financial, publicly traded assets towards institutional private investments where you're getting a first bite of the apple before they eventually take it public. Okay. So here we are, the data for this As the end of April 2022, it was up 6%. When the rest of the market is down significantly, it's at an average of close to 14% return a year. And again, new money's coming in. You're looking at a very good 4.3% tax efficient yield because of the benefits of depreciation recapture when it comes to you being a real estate investor. So very good portfolio that I've been using instead of bonds for my clients, and will continue to do so. Another area to take a look at in a rising rate environment is institutional private credit. Okay, so this is a fund that has $40.2 billion in it. 97% of it is senior secured. Floating rate fund means that as rates go up, you're going to get a higher return. Okay, so again, we see that private credit typically will give you a much higher yield versus high yield or senior secured loans. So this investment right now, the way it works is this company will provide loans to these individual companies. They'll tie it to LIBOR plus 5.5 or 6. So as rates go up every quarter, they readjust the higher dividend being paid to you as the investor. Okay, again, one of the few things here that year to date in 2022, we're seeing up 2%. Very good investment, doing very well for our clients. We expect it to do an average of about 8%. So I mentioned earlier, commodities is another great area to potentially take advantage of inflationary periods, and also what's taking place with population growth versus the availability of resources. Okay, that is natural resources that we're utilizing and we need for self-driving cars, for developing batteries, all of these different types of things that you're going to need out there. They require quite a bit of, in some kind, specialized materials, metals. So having an institutional manager that does a great job of managing commodities would be great. So this manager we use, from one of the prominent firms in the US, up 20% last year, 23% year to date. Very good. So our goal is to help our clients with this comprehensive wealth planning. And let me share the way the process works with you. So again, for those of you who want to schedule a 20-minute right fit call just to see how we may be able to help you, get you started on the right track, click to the right. But you can see here that, it's a consulting process that we use. The first step is to understand where you are now. So we want to get to know who you are, understand where your goals, objectives, your current finances. You get to know the services that we offer and begin to take action on prioritizing your life's goals. Second is we determine, what is it? Where do you want to go? Organizing your financial life and estate, understanding your net worth, understanding your goals. We basically do a cash flow analysis and we begin to develop a plan for you to implement, whether you work with our firm, do it yourself, or you can take it to anyone you're working with. And we want to put together how to achieve this holistic plan by putting together this integrated plan. If you're working with us, we continuously update it as we move forward. But this is the key to success, is to have a process that's going to take a look at your wealth from a holistic fashion to integrate and maximize what you get to keep during retirement. So in conclusion, everyone's personal situation and needs are greatly, varied. So based on your own personal circumstances, those that want to take advantage of this 20-minute right fit call, please click to the right to schedule this presentation. And each attendee is eligible for, this 20-minute call without any charges. This is an opportunity for us to understand your current tax situation. If you're in another state and you want to move to Florida, is determine what are the potential benefits. Also, if you need to have your estate planning documents transitioned or updated, we can help you do a comprehensive longevity analysis. That's the number one concerns retirees have is, do I have enough money to meet the lifestyle that I want? So that's something that we, again, model for you. But we do additional stress tests when it comes to, long-term care, fees, risk you have in your portfolio to see if you're able to withstand shocks, prolonged shocks in the system. After the year 2000 crash, we basically had a lost decade where the returns didn't come back. My concern is that as we potentially reach another high in the S&P 500 after this pullback, we may be entering into a multi-year bear market. So again, taking a look at this now, I think makes a lot of sense. Okay. So those of you attending the session with us today, the first 5 to book an appointment, we will go one step further, and that is provide this complete analysis valued at $3,995 for you for free. That's right, for free. You may be asking, why are you doing this? Well, for 5 people and 5 people only, we want to help our community, whether you're here next to us or whether you're moving down here from another state, begin to navigate this unprecedented pandemic and also fiscal policy by the government, the ramifications it may have on asset classes moving forward. So take advantage of this offer by clicking for that 20-minute right fit call. So this ends our presentation. I want to thank you for joining us today. Again, we enjoy Florida very much. We'd love to get to know you more. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon. Ciao.